And welcome to another special edition of College Road Trip. I'm Barry Nelson along with Ian DeMars, and we are here to bring you all the weekend happenings that were the Sweet 16 and the Elite 8. Ian, once again, stepping in for the vacationing Ryan Thies. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, no problem. I was glad I could be on again with you this week, Barry.
Absolutely. We're going to be talking today to Christian Heimall, our NCAA insider. He's going to be talking to us about the weekend that was, and also we're going to be talking to him a little bit about the first team selections for the all-tournament team, also who's got more pressure this weekend. Then we're going to be talking about ranking the coaches, the current coaches in college basketball, who is the best, and we're not going to leave anybody out, so you're going to want to stay tuned for that. Also, we're going to talk about LeVar Ball. Oh
again?
God. Yeah, I know. He's a train wreck that you just can't get rid of. He's a train wreck that you can't keep your eyes away from. So we're going to talk about him and what an incredibly I can't even say the word because we're live on the air, so I'm not even going to go there yet. And then talk about Frank Martin, who's actually good for the game of basketball, the South Carolina head coach. So let's get into it right away. Ian, first off, your game of the weekend. Which one was it?
I mean, there were a lot of great games, but obviously the game you had to pick as the game of the weekend had to be Wisconsin-Florida, just because it was a back-and-forth game. We saw a couple of incredible shots at the end of that game, including the winner for Florida. But let's not forget the one that Showalter made where after he made it, flashed the belt right at Aaron Rodgers. So without a doubt, that was definitely the best game of the weekend.
Well, and Chris Chiozzo hit that three-pointer, that running three-pointer. It was a defense that I just didn't understand. You had Nigel Hayes on one of the fastest, guys on Florida, and then you had Demetric Trice, who went back to the backcourt and didn't pick anybody up, and then you didn't have Ethan Happ step out onto the three-point line. He was in the middle of the lane. What he's doing in the middle of the lane, I don't know, because so what? They get a two-pointer. Yeah. Oh, well, they tie up the game. We go to overtime, and maybe Bronson Koenig gets there, maybe he doesn't. And it's just one of those things where you got to step up. Somebody has to step up, and they readily admit that they played a defense that wasn't correct.
Yeah, definitely that was something that obviously cost them the game, but I felt like Wisconsin, they had one timeout after that free throw. And I know typically if you're defending, you don't want to call a timeout to give the offense a chance to run a play. But you look at the last play in regulation, when they called a timeout, they ended up forcing a turnover and almost having a chance to win the game in regulation. So I felt like for the Badgers' sake, they should have called that timeout to set up the defense.
Well, not only set up the defense, maybe call a timeout in between and tell, hey, Nigel, you need to miss this one. I know you don't want to, but you need to miss this one because if they get the rebound, they are probably going to be scrambling. 4 seconds left on the clock. They're not going to have a chance to set up anything, so why not miss it? I know there's controversy here in Milwaukee about Giannis Antetokounmpo missing a free throw at the end of a game, and Coach Jason Kidd saying, "Hey, you got to miss that one because a make doesn't help us at all." Yeah. And in all actuality, a make didn't really help.
No.
The Badgers. If he would have gotten the basket to go and then a 3-point play, then it would have been fine. But it's one of those things where you just you cringe because you're a Wisconsin fan. I know I am. But Matt LePay said it best. I loved what Matt LePay said. He's the voice of the Wisconsin Badgers. I just want to pull it up here on. He sent it out via Twitter. I want to pull up the quote that he mentioned because he got it right on. He said, and this was after the South Carolina-Florida game. He said, happy for South Carolina, but honestly feel for Florida. The emotional swings of the NCAA tournament are unreal. That's what makes it special. And he's right. You look at Wisconsin, just that Wisconsin-Florida game, the ups and downs, the ups and downs, the ups and downs, and finally the ups for Florida and the downs for Wisconsin. Oh, my God, what an emotional roller coaster.
Yeah.
And how emotionally drained you have to be, whether you're on the winning side or the losing side.
Yeah, I mean, definitely just one of those games where you're not going to forget it. Both teams you look at, Wisconsin, heartbreaking loss. You look at what could have happened if maybe Kanan was fully healthy. I mean, we could tell he was cramping up in that game, had to come out towards the end of regulation, parts of overtime. And you look at Florida, I mean, you get a win like that, you get to go on to the Elite Eight and have a chance for a championship.
Another game that we like to watch, at least I like to watch, was the UNC Kentucky game yesterday. Mm-hmm. Oh man, what a classic game for the ages! You figure that UNC is going to win this one going away, and then all of a sudden, last minute, Kentucky just buries 3 threes and ties up the game. Then all of a sudden, Luke May for North Carolina buries the shot to win it with 0.3 seconds left, and it was just, I know Michael Jordan had some stuff to say about that. I know that Christian Laettner actually came out and said, "Welcome to the Last Shot Club, Luke May." So remember it, enjoy it, and what a classic game that was.
Yeah, it was definitely. I was at that point where when it got to that last minute, I was like, if Kentucky doesn't hit this 3 right before the minute mark, I might turn off the game and start watching something else. But luckily, I didn't turn away from that game. I ended up watching the ending, and it was just crazy to see what happened with Fox, a guy who's not really that good of a three-point shooter, keeping him in the game with the 3. And then Monk, who he only took 10 shots in the game, but when he got those shots at the end, he was able to make them and come up big for Kentucky. Unfortunately, Luke Mays, the guy that hurt Kentucky, cost them a chance at a Final Four. But congrats to UNC and a great play by Luke Mays.
Absolutely. And if you saw me taking a drink, it is 5 o'clock here. It's 5 o'clock somewhere, but it's 5 o'clock here too, so we're enjoying a beer here today during the show. UNC Kentucky coach John Calipari said, "Amazing we were in that game where they practically fouled out my team." Now, that's an indirect jab at the referees. Do you think, one, that the referees actually might have cost him the game, and 2, should he get reprimanded for it?
The refs didn't cost him the game. I knew it was going to be a physical game. You look at UNC, they're a bigger team, and you look at Kentucky, they're a fast team. So you look at when you mash up power against speed, it's going to result into a pretty physical game. And unfortunately for Kentucky, they weren't able to get through with all the foul trouble that they had. But I feel like that Calipari, despite what he said, I don't think he should get reprimanded for it. I feel like it's just one of those where, yeah, we lost a tough game and things didn't go our way because of the officials, but I feel like that's what coaches say after every game that you lose.
Gonzaga, West Virginia was another one of those games that came down to the wire, and Gonzaga won by 3. West Virginia with just an absolutely horrendous last possession. And I know Coach Bob Huggins is very outspoken about that. You had Xavier beating Arizona, just unreal. We're going to talk about those games in depth. We're going to bring on Christian Heimall. He is our NCAA basketball insider. Christian, once again, joining us we do have him. So, Christian, welcome. How you doing?
Recovering. It was listen, if you waited until this past few games to watch the NCAA tournament, you got your money's worth. That's for sure.
Well, I'm glad you got the memo about the burgundy shirt, because it's what we did. Ian didn't, so we're gonna have to penalize him for that. We were just discussing the game of the weekend. We had talked about Wisconsin, Florida. We talked about UNC, Kentucky. A little bit about Gonzaga, West Virginia. According to you, Christian, what is your game of the weekend?
The game of the week, it's really tough. I mean, you had the two that jump out are obviously Florida, Wisconsin, and then UNC, Kentucky. I thought UNC, Kentucky was the game of the tournament outside of the national championship when the brackets came out, because that was a game that you really wanted to be a Final Four game instead of a Sweet 16 game. But then to get Kentucky, UNC, was a lot of fun. Instead of I was really disappointed in how UCLA played, honestly. So I wasn't expecting much out of Kentucky, but to get Kentucky, UNC, and to get them to play that strong of a game was definitely a lot of fun to see the emotions that were going through for those two teams, and then to see it was played again with Wisconsin, Florida. You kind of got to give the edge to an overtime game, right? You got a buzzer beater to send it to OT, and then a buzzer beater to win it in OT in almost the same exact fashion. Was just intense to watch. And I know you guys were talking about it earlier. There are 2 words that come to mind on that last play that sent Wisconsin home. Stop ball. That simple. I don't know who it was. I don't know if it was Showalter or who it was that was running through the middle of the court as if
it was
he was expecting a pass.
Trice.
Yeah, Trice. Yeah. Where was he going? You get right in front of him. You stop. I know you don't want to foul there. I get it. But if you foul him before he shoots, what's the worst that happens? You go to double OT.
Yeah, exactly.
What happens? It's an argument that any guy who's ever been a play-by-play man or who has been a coach always asks, do you foul up 3? And in my personal opinion, if they're bringing it across the length of the court, yes, you foul up 3. Force them to try to tie. You foul if you're up 2. You just don't let them take that shot. He was wide open. Yes, it's a crazy shot and a runner. I mean, all that stuff, but still wide open. And they should have just jumped in front, fouled him even before he got to midcourt. I mean, what's the worst that happens? He ties it up and you go to overtime. You go to double OT. There's nothing bad with that.
I know you were just as upset at Kansas's loss to Oregon as I was because that absolutely, I have never had a bracket blow up in one weekend or in a matter of like 3 hours as this one did this weekend. My God, I mean, it went from Kansas, it went, Villanova earlier, then UCLA loses. I mean, all of my Final Four teams were out in a matter of a few hours, and it was just absolutely crazy how that happened. I'm sure that happened on your end too.
Yeah, all I had left going into the weekend was Kansas and UCLA. That was all I had left, and I lost both of them pretty quickly. But the thing with Kansas that really bothered me, we talk about this all the time, the three-point line is the greatest equalizer in sports. And when you're not hitting threes, it is just as devastating as when you are hitting threes to the other team. So for Kansas to go, I think their first 3 came with like 2 minutes left, or the first 3 of the second half came with like 2 minutes left in regulation. That's not how you win a basketball game. Give all credit in the world to Oregon for denying the 3, not letting them shoot, but you got away from what got you there as Kansas, and that is giving the ball down low, letting Josh Jackson go to work. And I thought that's kind of what really did Kentucky in not letting Adebayo control the paint. Give all the credit in the world to Kennedy Meeks of North Carolina. He was tremendous, but Arizona and Kansas, in my opinion, they lost because they went back against what they did to get them there, which was playing down low. I mean, Arizona ran into a very talented team in Xavier, and Kansas ran into probably, I know we talked about this last week, and I had Sindarius Thornwell as my MVP. I kind of want to change that to Jordan Bell because that kid was nuts.
That block was unbelievable.
To start the game,
right.
The very first play is a block from Jordan Bell, and he almost goes out and has a triple-double in the Elite Eight. The kid's playing tremendous, and I thought Jordan Bell and Kennedy Meeks are the reason why Oregon and North Carolina were able to advance.
So now, speaking of players that have played well this past weekend, who would you say, as of right now, would be your all-tournament team?
Based on the players that are still available.
On the guys that are still left, I mean, it's kind of hard to go against Karnowski at Gonzaga or Williams, even considering how well he played in that Elite Eight game. I still put Kennedy Meeks there. I absolutely put Joel Berry there, Tyler Dorsey, Jordan Bell. If you're going to give me only 5, I've got to give Sindarius Thornwell, number 1, Jordan Bell, Kennedy Meeks, Karnowski, and then I'll probably go Joel Berry just because Arkansas and North Carolina and Kentucky, it was Joel Berry who was hitting some big shots late for North Carolina, and you kind of got to have that point guard there. So I'd go those 5: Berry, Thornwell, Bell, Meeks, and Karnowski.
I agree with you on most of them. I have Thornwell, Dorsey. Justin Jackson, I think, is playing fairly well for North Carolina. Nigel Williams-Goss, of course, you mentioned him. I think he's just the catalyst. You got to have somebody from Gonzaga in there, and I figure I'm going to throw him in there. Why not? And then you answered my question. I said I had a question between either Jordan Bell or Kennedy Meeks. You said Kennedy Meeks. I think based on this last performance, I got to put Jordan Bell in there. I know I was going to put Luke May in there as well, but I kind of shoved him a little bit on the outside because he's not producing quite as well as those other 2. But I mean, it's really a toss-up. If you only got 5, it's really a tough task to name an all-tournament team, even with only 4 teams left.
Yeah, it really is, especially when you look at the fact that you have 2 players from both North Carolina and Oregon that deserve spots on that team. I mean, you mentioned Justin Jackson. He's definitely a third who deserves to be in that conversation when you're talking about North Carolina. When you look at Oregon, how about the fact that we haven't really talked about Dylan Brooks at all this tournament because of what Dorsey and Jordan Bell have done? And then you look at South Carolina, and there are a lot of there are a lot of X factors, a lot of supporting characters on that team for Sindarius Thornwell, whether it be Chris Silva, PJ Dozier, and a number of others. And then Gonzaga is one of those teams that. I mean, listen, I'm one of them. I underestimated Gonzaga this year. I thought they would have been the first number 1 seed to go down, and there was a very legitimate chance they were going to be the only number 1 left into the Final Four before Luke May's shot yesterday. But when you look at it, what Gonzaga has is a tremendous team. The guy that gets talked about a lot is Karnowski, obviously, because of just how strong he is down low. And as much as I don't think many people would want to see it in the national championship game, Karnowski against Kennedy Meeks could be a lot of fun to watch if those two advance. And then, of course, seeing what guys like Joe Rahan can do, what guys like Nigel Williams-Goss and Nick Williams can do against a Joel Berry or a Justin Jackson. That's a great matchup. I mean, as much as it may not be the ratings boost that everybody's hoping for in the media with these 4 teams, North Carolina being the only blue blood that is there, you're talking about an Oregon squad that hasn't been there since it won the very first tournament, 79 years ago, whatever it was, and then 2 teams who have never been there in South Carolina and Gonzaga. A lot of folks are kind of hoping North Carolina gets there just to have that consistent name and that factor that's always been, but there are so many great matchups and storylines, no matter who advances to Monday night.
We didn't mention much about the Oregon-Kentucky or the Oregon-Kansas game. We both had Kansas winning, and Oregon won going away. I mean, not even close at the end. And what a tribute to Dana Altman and the Oregon Ducks is. They moved on to the Final Four, man. They got past a very tough Michigan team. They got past a Rhode Island team who was kind of the pick of everybody, the underdog that everybody thought was going to go, the 11 seed, that was going to go besides Xavier. And now they get past a tough Kansas team. What kind of a run are the Ducks really on?
One that is really impressive and a tribute to what Dana Altman and his coaching staff have put together. But again, I mean, you look at it, and Barry, you know this from even coaching a little bit. There are 2 things that travel with you no matter where you go: defense and attitude. And that's the most important thing when it comes to the tournament. And that's what has gotten South Carolina to where they are right now. But when you play defense the way that Oregon has over the last couple of games, it doesn't have to be for a full, consistent 40 minutes, just those key stretches. And Oregon found those stretches early in the second half to really put Kansas away. Jordan Bell at the start with that block was huge to set the tone. Their defense in the second half, especially at the 3-point line, was what I thought the biggest key, because I think Kansas was something like 2 for 15 over the day or something like that from 3-point land, and their only one in the second half came with about 2 minutes left. A team that does shoot the 3 very well. And I think they really bothered Frank Mason up top. They didn't allow him to probe inside, get underneath the basket, get those easy layups. They really made Frank Mason work a lot. And when your point guard is struggling to move the basketball, whether it be through passes or through dribbling, it really upsets the rest of your offense. And Oregon did a tremendous job with that. That's a great job on the scouting report from Dana Altman and his squad to be able to do that. And they're going to be focused on a lot more of the same. This Final Four matchup of Jordan Bell and Kennedy Meeks is going to be tremendous, because all the attention is going to be placed there. But can Tyler Dorsey, Dylan Brooks up top, can they be able to prevent Justin Jackson, Joel Berry, and the supporting cast of North Carolina on the outside, just like they did with Frank Mason and Josh Jackson of Kansas in the Elite Eight?
Yeah, so Christian, based off of all that, who do you think is most primed to get that national championship? Do you think it's Oregon, despite not having their shot blocker in Boucher? Do you think it's North Carolina, who seems like they have the right pieces, or Gonzaga, who people think it's finally their year, or even South Carolina, who's just surprised everyone this tournament?
It's one of those tournaments that I think everybody's kind of forgotten, has kind of thrown out the idea of who they think is going to actually win. It's easy to say North Carolina right now, especially considering the way they have played this tournament. I thought going into the tournament, I thought North Carolina was the most suspect number 1 seed, just because of how poorly they played in the second half against Duke in the ACC tournament. Okay. And how much they really struggled there. I wasn't sure. I thought their path, especially when you had Kentucky, UCLA, potentially Minnesota or a couple of other teams, should they advance through in that round, I thought they had a really tough road to go. But what they've done, Roy Williams, I mean, listen, it's been the story for them this whole year. Ever since they lost the national championship game last year. They had that whole text message group that they renamed Redemption. They have a mission. They have a mindset of what they want to be able to do. The question is if they're going to be able to do it. Now, personally, I would love to see Oregon, South Carolina. I think that'd be a lot of fun in a national championship game. I do think the way Oregon is playing right now, they have the best chance. In my opinion, as much as I don't want it to be the de facto national championship game, something about that Oregon-North Carolina game just feels to me like a national championship game. Whoever comes out of there as the winner. And I just think the way that Jordan Bell is playing defensively is really going to be an issue. Because if you look at what Kennedy Meeks has done, it's been on the offensive glass. Jordan Bell's not going to let him get all those offensive rebounds.
Talking with Christian Heimall, our NCAA basketball insider, looking at our Facebook comments. Jeff, our buddy Jeff Child says he too. Me too. Just got one left, so we're not the only ones in that boat. Baxter said Gonzaga is my last team left. Chris Williams says that Oregon has an NBA talent that can make big plays in winning time, and I tend to agree. They got a lot of talent.
I've known Chris Williams for a long time. He's a guy he and I talk about winning time a lot. He talks about the final 3 minutes of a game, and Tyler Dorsey is the guy he's talking about, winning time. He makes those plays. Dylan Brooks has done it throughout the regular season. It's been Tyler Dorsey here in the NCAA tournament. He's absolutely right. And Smooth knows a thing or two about winning a championship in crunch time. If you guys ever get a chance, Chris Williams, look up his free throws in the MAC championship in 1992 against LaSalle and for the Manhattan Jaspers. He's a guy who he's very steady, very calm under pressure, and he recognizes talent. Talent recognizes talent. That's for sure.
Whenever we can get a LaSalle reference on this show, it's awesome. That's like Louisiana Tech, It's LaSalle, Louisiana
the Raging
Tech.
Cajun.
Exactly. It's awesome. Now, Kristen, you kind of alluded to this as a little bit earlier, but who's got more pressure on them? Is it Gonzaga, who has never been here before, has had a number one seed, Mark Few, who everybody deems as this great coach, but can't win the big one? Or is it UNC getting back to this point and really wanting redemption?
It's definitely North Carolina. When you were just there a year ago and you lost on a dramatic shot that a lot of people think that North Carolina was ahead in that game. We forget that game was tied with 4 seconds to go, and Chris Jenkins just hit a three when all he needed was a free throw to be able to win it. But when you are that close to it and you lose in that fashion, you only have one thing on your mind, and that is getting back and winning another title. So the pressure is definitely all on North Carolina here. The way I look at it, this is going to be a really weird comparison, but follow me on this. The other three teams are very similar to the 2004. Once you got the monkey off your back of beating the Yankees and getting to the World Series, there really is no more pressure. Obviously, there's still something left in attaining that championship. And, of course, in 2004, they rolled through St. Louis to a sweep. But Gonzaga, Oregon, and really not South Carolina, because I don't know if anybody's ever expected them to contend for a national title. But Gonzaga, who it's been on that monkey on their back, they never got to a Final Four before. Now that they're there, I wouldn't be surprised if you see Gonzaga go out and win big over South Carolina. I don't expect that to happen, but that pressure of never making it before is now gone. So they can play maybe a little bit more free. There's no monkey on their back or whatever it may be for that stance. So I can really see Gonzaga having a different mindset now because that so-called monkey's off their back and they don't really have to worry about that kind of pressure. Meanwhile, North Carolina, what's going to be the story if they don't make the championship game or if they lose again after all the talk about how they wanted nothing more after losing last year than to come back and win it this year?
So I'm going to ask both of you. Ian, I'm going to start with you. Who do you want to see in the title game? And we'll break down the title game. We'll break down the Final Fours coming up on Wednesday on our regular time slot. But right now, who do you want to see?
I want to see that West Coast matchup. I want Gonzaga going against Oregon. I've always been a big Dylan Brooks fan, and he hasn't really played up to his game this tournament. But you look at Tyler Dorsey, Jordan Bell stepping up. All those guys are just making Oregon exciting to watch like I've always thought they've been. And, of course, you got to look at Gonzaga, a team that always been pressured, never coming up big in the big moments. And this year they're starting to do that. They're winning those close games, and I feel like that's the matchup that not just me, but a lot of America wants to see.
See, I'm total opposite. I want to see the Civil War. I want to see North Carolina against South Carolina. I want to see what Sindarius Thornwell can do against guys like Kennedy Meeks and Justin Jackson. I think that would be just a tremendous storyline, and for Clemson to come out and be the national champs in football, and then all of a sudden, if South Carolina would happen to win the national championship, have two teams from South Carolina, which is really not noted for their sports up until, maybe except for Clemson.
Yeah, and you look at the women's too. South Carolina has a chance to win their national title. Well, they have UConn, but
right.
I mean, you still got a chance.
Exactly. So, Christian, what do you think? You want, or do you want something totally different? Do you want to see South Carolina against Oregon?
See, I kind of want to see South Carolina and North Carolina, but for a different reason. I want to see Frank Martin coach against Roy Williams. I want to see that matchup.
Intriguing matchup.
That's a lot of fun. I mean, Frank, a guy that if you look back at his path as a coach, he was never supposed to be here. I mean, the guy was a bouncer in Miami after he lost his high school coaching job, but kept his teaching job for whatever reason. And this is a guy who wrote handwritten notes to multiple Division I coaches, the only one asking for tips about how to be a coach, what to do in this business. The only one to respond to him was Coach Krzyzewski at Duke. And then he goes and beats Duke. So for him to continue on this stretch and then potentially in the national championship game, meet not only the other school in North Carolina, but probably, and this is with all due respect to Coach Williams, the third greatest and most revered coach in North Carolina behind Dean Smith and Mike Krzyzewski, for him to meet up with the legend of Roy Williams in a national championship game after already going through Coach Krzyzewski on his way there, that would be a lot of fun for me to watch and to see them. But then the other part about it is, at the same time, I would love to see that West Coast matchup of Oregon Gonzaga, because it would be a lot of fun. And it would be really, really interesting to see how the bigs of Karnowski and Bell go at it. I mean, there are so many individual matchups within it that you kind of people don't think about. They think about the schools more than anything else. But the individual coaching matchup of Frank Martin and Roy Williams is what really kind of intrigues me more than anything else.
All right, Christian, before we let you go, I want to play a little game here. We have 5 coaches that are on our list, and I want you to rank them 1 through 5. So you may need to get a paper and pencil here. We got, and I want all of our Facebook listeners to see if you can come up with a ranking too. I want you to comment on Facebook, comment down below, and tell us how you would rank these. All right, first of all, we got John Calipari. He's got 6 Final Fours, 1 national championship. Of course, 2 of those Final Fours had to be vacated.
I'm about to say, are we counting 6 or 4? So
we're going to say 6 because it's officially he's been to 6, but 2 of them were vacated. Rick Pitino, he's been to 7 Final Fours, 2-time national champion. You got Mike Krzyzewski. He's got 1,000 wins, 5-time national championship, 12 Final Fours, 91 tournament wins. And you have Roy Williams, 2-time champ, 9 Final Fours, 74 tournament wins. And then you have Gino Auriemma, 11-time national champions, 23 conference champions, 112 tournament wins, which is number 1, tied with Pat Summitt. How do you rank those? Do you rank them based just on numbers, or do you rank them on longevity? Give me your 1 through 5.
There's so much there, and if I'm only given those 5, I would have to consider, as much as it pains me to do it as a Louisville fan, to put Coach Pitino down at 5 right now, just because of his stint in Boston with the Celtics. I think you have to include that. If we're talking strictly college basketball, he probably goes up a little bit. But Coach Calipari, actually, you know what? Now that I'm thinking about it, I would put Coach Cal at 5. Just on you can't ignore the fact that some of the things he did were not by the books, and that's why 2 of those Final Fours are vacated. So you somewhat have to consider that. Not taking away from his coaching talent. Look at how many NBA draft picks and lottery picks he's had as a coach. But at Memphis, at UMass, at Kentucky, I would put Coach Cal there. Rick Pitino at 4. Gino Auriemma goes to 3 for me, just because of what he has built at UConn. Now, I know a lot of people are going to probably argue that point. My biggest thing with UConn women's basketball is I would love to see I can't wait for a school, whether it be Baylor, whether it be Notre Dame, or the greatest thing for women's basketball was Gino Auriemma against Pat Summitt. Mm-hmm. And when you lost that rivalry, when you lost that competition for UConn, I don't want to say it diminishes what they've accomplished, because their 100-plus wins is something else, but it almost kind of takes things away because there's no real competition there for anybody. There's no one you can really kind of sit there and go, yeah, well, they played in a time when they were the only real dominating force. So I would put Gino Auriemma 3, Coach Williams, Roy Williams at 2, and then listen, it's as much as I cannot stand the Duke Blue Devils, if you're giving me those 5, Coach K is at the top of that list right now. 1,000 wins, 5-time national champ. He's done it at one school, for his legacy, and it's hard to argue, because when you think about it and when you rank all the programs in the in the country, Duke is inevitably going to be in that top 3, maybe 5 comparison if someone really wants to split hairs and put Duke at a 4 or 5. So. I would go Coach K right there at the top, as much as it pains me to do it.
Yeah, I would. I'll let that sink in for a little bit, and I'll tell.
That being said, John Wooden, Bob Knight, those guys should definitely be up there. But
we're talking current coaches. So who's coaching now? Right. So I mean, we gotta have to put that caveat, because of course I would put John Wooden and Coach Knight up there as well, and Pat Summitt would probably be in there as well. But Christian
Smith, Adolph Ruff, all those guys. So.
Exactly. Christian, great stuff as always. We always love having you on the show. We're looking forward to it. I just want to remind people, next Monday, join us. We're going to have our panel back on next Monday. It's going to be Jeff, Christian, and hopefully Dominic. We know we got commitments out of 2 out of 3 of them, so we're looking forward to having you guys back and just kind of wrapping this all up and talking about the national championship game before it happens.
This is the best week. Literally, this come Saturday, it's the best week of the year. You have the Final Four, Major League Baseball opening day. It cannot get any better than this if you're a sports fan.
By the way, your buddy Drew said he knew that had to hurt naming Coach K as your number 1, Christian.
Oh, that absolutely killed me to do it. I might have to go wash my mouth out with some soap or some whiskey after that. So,
all right, Christian Heimall, our NCAA basketball insider. Thank you once again. We will talk to you next week.
My pleasure, guys.
All right, Christian Heimall he is the play-by-play voice for the Manhattan Jaspers. That's why he likes to reference the MAC quite a bit. Mm-hmm. And but going off of what he said, how would you rank those top 5? I know you got the numbers in front of you. Where would you go? Are you in the same boat or?
I'm pretty close to what he has. I have Calipari 5 because of the 2 vacates. I have Rick Pitino 4, like he said before, because of the coaching stint back in Boston. I actually have 2 and 3 switched. I like Roy Williams as my number 3, and the reason why I have it switched is just because Gino Auriemma has just built a powerhouse at UConn. And when you build that powerhouse, it's kind of hard not to keep you can't keep him outside the top 2, in my opinion, just because of that. And you look at the way he coaches, if you've listened to some of his press conferences, especially the one about
last week.
Yeah, the one about how he benched Breanna Stewart, I believe, in the game.
For 35 minutes because she had a bad attitude.
Like, he's probably one of the best coaches just because of that quote right there. I mean, you look at the way he coaches too. I mean, it's kind of hard for me not to put him number 1, but just looking at Krzyzewski's success, it's 1,000 wins, 5 national championships. He's always able to get those teams to the top, even if it is a down year for them.
What was awesome is that you could actually say Krzyzewski successful in consecutive words there.
I can say it. I might not be able to spell it, but what about you, Barry?
That's the one thing that I ask people. Do you diminish Coach Gino Auriemma's success because, 1, it's on the women's side, and 2, because there is no other competition? And there's a reason why there is no other competition, is because he built that program up. Yeah, he had his run-ins with Pat Summitt, and he's had his battles, but he's built that program up so much. it's really hard not to say he's number one because he has 11 national championships. He's got 23 consecutive conference championships. He has the most NCAA tournament wins, tied with Pat Summitt, who is considered the greatest women's coach of all time. And now Gino Auriemma it's kind of 1 and 1A.
Yeah.
And so it's really hard for me not to put Gino at number one. Coach Krzyzewski has done a great job, a fantastic job, probably one of the best, if not the best, in men's basketball, men's Division I basketball. I know a lot of people might say, well, John Wooden or Coach Bobby Knight would be up in that conversation as well, but we're talking about current coaches right now. Of course, Roy Williams doing a great job. Maida is making his 9th Final Four this year. He has 2 national championships, one with North Carolina, one with Kansas, 74 tournament wins. You can't downgrade him for that. Calipari, I think, he's maybe 5, maybe even lower.
Yeah.
I never liked the guy. I don't like the guy. I think he's a cheater. Coach Rick Pitino, kind of get that same vibe from him as Calipari, but a little bit more on the up and up, but really not. I got to make it a tie between Coach K and Gino Auriemma because they're not coaching in the same venue. They're not coaching the same gender. So it's a little, you can't really compare apples to apples. It's not necessarily apples to oranges, but you can't compare the two because they're coaching 2 different genders. But I think what Gino has put up and what Coach Mike Krzyzewski have put up at their respective places can't be denied. And I think you got to give them 1 and 1A.
Absolutely.
So, I just thought it was interesting. I saw somebody break that down online today. I can't remember what site it was, but they said, rank the coaches, and I thought that was that'd be an interesting topic for us. But switching gears here on the road trip, my goodness, do we have that? Do we have that clip ready to go? I just want to play like a minute of this because this is something courtesy of ESPN. They are LeVar Ball all day, all the time. And this was from earlier in the week. And so I want to play you a little bit of ESPN's First Take with Stephen A. Smith and LeVar Ball and just kind of get your take on this as we're still queuing up the video. But LeVar Ball, man, enough is enough. And everybody's talking about this. But like I said before, it's a train wreck that you can't take your eyes off of, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to play that clip right now. Go ahead.
I ain't going to get on that. I'm not going to be like everybody else and talk about, what you did or didn't do when you went college. Forget all of that. Right. What I'm asking you is a simple question. We talk about the GOAT here, the greatest of all time, Michael Jordan, and you running your mouth talking about you going to beat him one-on-one. Why would you say something so blasphemous?
In my heyday, he would need help.
Really?
He's too small. His name is big, and y'all like, it was a 5-on-5 game, he good. One-on-one, I'm undefeated, never lost.
Will you stop it? Don't
Never
apologize
lost
on TV.
one-on-one.
That don't make any sense. Listen.
Ain't nobody beat me in heyday one-on-one.
Why you saying stuff like that?
Distance one-on-one.
That's that, man. You look like you were tired.
Hey, let me ask you this like I tell him.
That's why you smiling right
Did
now.
I win or lose? Did I win or lose?
Right.
All I care about is the W. I don't
you
care
were
how I
tired
get
from
it.
dancing, and you talking about you going to beat Michael Jordan?
Michael
how you
Jordan.
Do that?
How you going to beat me?
You know what?
I got to hear how you going to beat me.
Pick your poison.
How's he going to beat me?
Why are you saying stuff like
Tell
this?
me how's he going to beat me.
Why are you doing this? Why are you? Is this another marketing tool of yours?
Check this out.
Okay, how's he going to beat you? Let's see. He's going to dunk over you. Even at the age of 55, he is going to shoot a numerous amount of fadeaway jumpers. He's going to bury everything that he shoots, and he's going to hold you to your college average of 2 points. So, man, LeVar Ball is just a talker, and that's not even the crux of my discussion here today with you, Ian. Mm-hmm. He's been on ESPN numerous amount of times, and I know
when hasn't he been?
Yeah,
on ESPN?
I know.
That's what we need to figure out.
And I know Baxter and Tanner mentioned this on halftime today and Tanner went off a little bit on a tangent about how LeVar Ball and Lonzo Ball were on ESPN and how LeVar kind of left him in the weeds and left Lonzo hanging and stuff like that. And he's a turd. I just don't. This guy. We need to get rid of this guy. But there's a report, a couple of articles that I read this week. Or this weekend, TotalProSports.com. Now, I checked the legitimacy of this website, and it is legit. Okay. It is one of those websites that I thought, nah, this can't happen. But the first article was, report, LeVar Ball is undermining the coach's authority at Chino Hills. Players listening to him instead of the coach. Listen, just Take a listen to what this has to say. So it said LeVar has basically taken over the coaching duties of the team while shouting from the stands, and the players are actually listening to him. It says, quote, Chino Hills California boys basketball coach Stephen Gilling hasn't forgotten the deep voice shouting in the second half from the stands in the quarterfinal in the quarter full Orleans Arena in Las Vegas. He knew exactly who was yelling. It was LeVar Ball, father of Chino Hills, LiAngelo, and LaMelo, and UCLA star Lonzo. He kept yelling, double team, double team. The first-year head coach, and that's one thing that's really gotten him in trouble, is because this is a first-year head coach, had won his first 9 games of the season, but after a pair of close wins at the mid-December Tarkanian Classic, the Huskies faced another test in Roosevelt High School out of California. They went into the locker room trailing at the half by 12. Chino Hills had been double-teaming Roosevelt shooters for the first half, but Gilling needed to make an adjustment. He goes into the locker room, and I tell the guys to stop double-teaming. Just stay with your man, Gilling said. You do that, and we'll definitely get stops and come back out and win. Yet, there was that voice again in the second half. Double team, double team. When Ball would shout for the double team, Chino Hills players actually followed his instruction. Gilling would yell, stop trapping. This continued for much of the second half until eventually Gilling's message got through to his players, and Chino Hills stuck to the man-to-man and won 76-68. And Gilling says he remembers an incensed Ball coming to that was a bad Freudian slip. An incensed Ball bolting straight for the locker room, saying, he comes to me and says, what are you doing? What are you doing? And I said, what do you mean? I'm trying to win the game. And he turns to me and walks into our locker room, and they had to physically restrain him from going into the locker room. So that's a report saying that I
even read that the coach had to, when he wanted to meet with the team after, they had to meet in their hotel.
Right.
That's how bad it got.
Yeah, because he has to be it says here, he pretty much downplays me at the same time. My assistant coach sees him and says to him, that's not right. Is there any middle ground? He says, no, there's no middle ground. So just the audacity that LeVar Ball has, not only to implement himself into Lonzo's career, but now he is doing that to LiAngelo and LaMelo. Just think of what this family has got to go through. And I want to show you just how much of a turd this guy is, okay? There's another article that says LeVar Ball won't let his kids see their sick mother in the hospital. He says it's bad for media attention, okay? According to a member of the Ball family, LeVar is not allowing his children, Lonzo, LiAngelo, or LaMelo, to see their sick mother as she recovers from a stroke and life-threatening skull surgery. So apparently she had a stroke. He said Tina Ball, his wife, had a stroke on February 21st. She had life-threatening skull surgery to relieve brain pressure. Guess where LeVar was during the operation that could have killed his wife? At the Chino Hills High School game against Long Beach Poly with his sons, including Lonzo. He still has not allowed the kids to see their sick mother due to the media attention it would bring to him and cause BBB sales, now that's his brand, to diminish. Okay? It says Tina is there now and is in the hospital now, and he only pays visits for 1 hour a few days a week while her mother has yet to leave her side. I mean, what kind of person does that? Yeah, first of all, that's your wife.
Yeah.
If it was my wife, I would never leave her side, not for anything. I mean, maybe to go to the bathroom, but I mean, if my wife is in the hospital, I'm sleeping. You know, the terms visiting hours, as Robin Williams said in the movie Good Will Hunting, the terms visiting hours don't apply to me. Okay. And yet he's not even letting his kids see it because it would provide bad media attention.
Yeah, I mean, when I first read both of these articles, it made me think of the TV show One Tree Hill, because it's a story of this dad who's just overly aggressive about his son's basketball career, and he's just trying to like take over them and everything. And just reading these articles, it kind of just, I mean, we know that LeVar goes off on tangents, but this is pushing it too far. I mean, when I played college football, if my mom had an emergency procedure and I had a big game, I don't care. I'm not playing that game. I'm going to make sure my mom's okay.
It says the ball boys are not allowed, and the ball boys, by meaning Lorenzo, LiAngelo, and LaMelo, are not allowed to see their mother. LeVar is afraid it will take away from their games. Lonzo had a big game at Arizona State and U of A later that week. Also, media buzz would take away from the interviews and media touring for LeVar, and the BBB brand would suffer. they need the BBB brand to suffer because they don't need it to suffer because it's non-existent. I don't know anybody who's bought in the 3B brand now. Maybe on the West Coast they have, but here in the Midwest, and I haven't seen it on the East Coast much either. But I just think this guy is just so full of himself, and credit the kids. God love those kids because they are keeping their mouths shut. Lonzo is one of the most soft-spoken kids you could ever.
Yeah, just seeing him doing interviews after games, you always see him. He's not really pressured. He's always saying the right things. He's always thanking the reporters.
Right.
And then you look at his dad, who
must have got that from his mother's side.
Must have. And then you just see his dad going off on Stephen A. Smith for 20 minutes on national television. I mean, he did invite him over to the house for pancakes, but I mean,
yeah, he probably bought those pancakes at McDonald's. Anyway, getting off of LeVar Ball, because I don't want to spend too much time on the negativity. Let's spend some time on what's right with college basketball. And Frank Martin. Oh, my God. What a story this guy has been. Christian alluded to it earlier. He was bouncing in Florida, and he wrote letters to college coaches saying, what can I do to win? And Coach K, God love him, has been kind of a mentor to him. And he's taken what he's learned, and he's passing it on. And one quote that I want you to listen to is, and I think I lost it. Maybe I didn't. No, actually, I got it right here. One of the quotes that he made was, it said, "You know what makes me sick to my stomach? When I hear grown people say that kids have changed. Kids haven't changed. Kids don't know anything about anything. We've changed as adults. We demand less of kids. We expect less of kids. We make their lives easier instead of preparing them for what life is truly about. We're the ones that have changed." So opposite of what LeVar Ball is.
Yeah.
LeVar Ball living in this fantasy land thinking he's going to get $1 billion for his kids. And then you got Frank Martin who says, hey, place the expectations on those kids. You know, that's what we need to do. We're softening these kids, and it's not the kids that are soft, it's the parents and the adults around them that are softening these kids.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I mean, and it's not just because of the run South Carolina's doing. This is how Frank Martin coaches. I mean, if you could tell me before this year he was the coach of South Carolina, I wouldn't have remembered.
No, me either.
I remember, I think the last time he coached was when he was at Kansas State. And he had a decent career there, but just with the fact that I feel bad that he's getting it's only becoming important now because they're winning. And the fact of LeVar Ball just going off because his son could be the #1 pick this year.
Right.
But I feel that Frank Martin is one of those coaches that is the coach that players want to play for. Now,
I'm going to play you a clip from earlier this week. We're going to play a clip from earlier this week, and it was from his press conference after I believe he beat it wasn't Florida. It was the game before that after they beat Duke. Or no, I'm sorry, after they beat Baylor.
Okay.
I want you to imagine how LeVar Ball would have answered this question and then watch Frank Martin answer this question. It's just absolutely unbelievable. If we could go ahead and play that clip. You talk about class. Frank Martin not only saying to the kid, hey, wow, way to have, the courage to be on a national stage and to ask the first question, but hey, that was one heck of a question that I've never heard before, and I'm just thinking of what LeVar Ball would have said to him. It don't matter about defense. It matters about offense.
I think
that's
first
he
would have said, what do you know? You're just a kid. You shouldn't be asking questions.
Exactly.
Honestly.
Yeah, but I mean, Frank Martin this year for college basketball is all that is right in my mind with college basketball.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And like I said, Could it just be because of their success? Maybe, but just looking at the way he answers questions and he's talking about it's always about the team. That's kind of what's been pushing him.
I think he's one of those guys that knows where he came from and is not going to forget where he came from.
Exactly.
You know, you have some of these coaches who eventually, you know, they have this sort of mentality of, yeah, I'm an elite coach, I'm great, you know. I think Frank Martin's going to be one of those guys, you know, 10, 15 years down the road, even if he does have a national championship or two or a couple Final Fours, just be like, man, I'm still not that good. He's going to be very humble. I know, and for me, I'm always my worst critic too. And if somebody tells me, oh, you did good at something, I always take a look at it and say, yeah. It could have been better, and I think that's kind of where Frank Martin is coming from. I think what he brings to the table from a coach's perspective is absolutely fantastic, and I love to see him succeed. I hope Dana Altman, Roy Williams, and also Mark Few. I hope they have one heck of a Final Four because it's a once in a lifetime thing, and I know Frank Martin's going to be one of those guys that says, hey, this could be my once in a lifetime opportunity. So, who do you – we already said who do you want in the Final Four. Who do you think is going to be in the Final Four? Is it the same? I know you said you wanted a West Coast matchup, but who do you actually think is going to be out there?
It's kind of tough to think of who exactly I want to pick just because this Final Four is kind of unpredictable. I mean, no one really thought Gonzaga was going to make it this far. A lot of people had South Carolina losing their first game. Then you look at Oregon without having Boucher was definitely a factor. People saying they might be able to get to the Sweet 16, but when they face those premier teams, they're going to struggle. And then you got North Carolina, who people thought that they could make a run, but they're going to have some tough competition with either UCLA or Kentucky. I feel like in the end, I think Gonzaga, they have too much, I think, and for them to not get there, I feel like that the growth that they've had this year, Mark Few finally getting to that Final Four, helps them get to that championship. And then, although I want Oregon to get there, I just feel like that the leadership from North Carolina is going to come through for them in the end.
I think you're right. I think it's going to end up being North Carolina and Gonzaga. I think it's going to be the two number one seeds. I don't think you can really deny what North Carolina has on their mind. They have revenge on their mind or what they call redemption this year. And Gonzaga, they're out to prove people wrong. They got a chip on their shoulder saying, hey, we've been here before, but we haven't won the big game. I know Coach Mark Few is probably preaching that as well, but it's really one of those things where you cheer for a couple teams, but you know the other teams are probably going to win. I hope South Carolina wins. Yeah. I really do. I love the way they play. Their defense is just outstanding. Sindarius Thornwell is one of those guys that has gone from being a late second-round pick in the next NBA draft to being possibly a lottery pick now. And we're going to talk about that coming up on Wednesday. We're going to talk about the latest mock drafts and how much the NCAA tournament should impact their draft status. And we're going to be talking with a new correspondent. Is it how do you pronounce it? Now, Baxter, you pronounce it, is it Unkwa Nsanye. Just an absolutely fabulous name. I'm not going to get it right on Wednesday either, but we're excited to have him on our college basketball roundup. We're going to be talking to him about that and a couple other things. But I think Sindarius Thornwell, he was the SEC Player of the Year for a reason. Yeah. You know, and you take a look at all these. You took a look at Chris Chiozzo and Kevon, is it Bell? Allen, sorry. Kevon Allen, the guy who lit up Wisconsin for over 30 points. And you take a look at some of these guys and you think, oh, man, they got an opportunity. They should have maybe been the Player of the Year. But Sindarius Thornwell was Player of the Year in the SEC for a reason. And he's put this team on his back. And he's carried this team. And I just don't think – I think they are the team of destiny. Even if they do lose in the national championship game, I'd love to see it. I'd love to see North Carolina, South Carolina, and it would just be strange for them not to play this like at south of the border. Yeah. If you guys are familiar with the Carolinas, there is a little rest stop called south of the border between the North Carolina and South Carolina borders. Look it up. Pedro will love you for it. But I think for that to happen, I think it would bring those two, the SEC and the ACC, closer together, and I think that it would just be a fantastic matchup nationally. I think it would be something that a lot of people would like, the blue blood UNC against the underdog SEC or underdog South Carolina.
Absolutely, I definitely agree with that. I feel like that this year's South Carolina team, they kind of make me think of the first year Butler made the national championship.
Right.
They were a team that no one was really expecting to even get past maybe the first round, and yet they go to have a chance to go to the finals. And look at Butler; they basically were a little, probably an inch off the backboard away from winning a national championship.
Mm-hmm. And it's going to be interesting to see what all transpires. That's going to be next Monday night. We have a show coming up this Wednesday. Our original time slot. Ryan Thies will be back. We're going to have Unque. Okay, Unque Onsonye going to be, I'm going to get that name right, Unque, don't worry about it. He's going to be our correspondent on Wednesday. We'll be talking to him, breaking down everything that's going on in the Final Four and the national championship game. A look ahead to the NBA draft, a look back on the biggest storylines of the season and of the tournament, and a reminder that next Monday we will have our final special edition show for the college road trip, and we're going to bring our panel back. We're going to try and attempt to bring our panel back. We got two of them already confirmed to come back. Jeff Childs from WTKA in Ann Arbor, and of course Christian Heimall. They are set to go. We're still waiting on Dom Garrett to see if he can come on. I'm sure he will, as he has covered the Michigan State University Spartans for The Only Color Is Green. So just a great job by those guys. We look forward to it. We look forward to a national championship talk. Ian, you filled in tremendously for Ryan as he was gone. I really appreciate that.
Thanks, Barry. I was glad to be on here. And if you'd love to see my glorious face again, tune in Thursday mornings from 9 to 10 and catch me and Josh Scheibe on Bubbler Banter here on the Brew Sports Network.
Talking about Brew City sports and also talking about Wisconsin sports.
Yes, we will talk about the heartbreak of Wisconsin this week.
Absolutely. My thanks to you guys for tuning in, especially last week. We had our highest rated show of the week last week, so thank you very much for tuning in last week, and we hope you tune in this week and next week as well. So for Ian DeMars, our engineers and producers, Baxter Colburn and David Bobke, thank you so much. I'm Barry Nelson saying so long. We will see you at from 5 to 6 on Wednesday. You've been watching College Road Trip on Brew Sports.